Martin Keller muttered a curse as the control panel on his ship blinked out for the last time. The Wanderer, a rugged freighter that had limped through half the outer rim, had finally died. Its power core, long overdue for replacement, had given out on the dusty landing pads of Nebulon 5, a desert planet baking under twin suns, forgotten by most of the Galactic Alliance. Stranded and already calculating the cost of missed contracts, Martin slammed the panel shut. A gruff local mechanic, six-armed and covered in sun-creased leather skin, had given him a quote that nearly made his teeth crack. "You want your ship flying again? 3 standard days. Maybe 4. You pay now." Highway robbery, Martin had thought. But he didn't have time to argue. The only way to reach his next job, equipment installation for a mining outfit, was public transit. That meant taking the Nebulon Rail, a magnetic hover train notorious for its discomfort and questionable safety record. He purchased a ticket to Dryan Outpost from a chirping dispenser that spat out a thin silver card. Stepping onto the platform, he stood out immediately. Tall and solid at 6 feet 4 inches, Martin wore his khaki t-shirt like armor. His skin already glistened with sweat despite the weak climate control, a dead giveaway he wasn't built for desert life. The train hovered at the platform, sleek, silver, and already half full. As Martin entered the rear car, he noticed something odd. One seat remained conspicuously empty, despite the crowd. Around it, passengers sat deliberately apart, forming a clear buffer around its lone occupant. She was impossible to miss. Turquoise skin shimmered faintly under the cabin lights. Silvery tendrils flowed from her scalp down her back, moving like liquid metal. Freckles, silver and glowing, dotted her skin like stars. Delicate fins framed her face where ears might be. But more than her appearance, it was her expression that caught Martin's attention. A quiet cocktail of shame and practiced detachment. She knew exactly why no one wanted to sit near her. He didn't hesitate. "This taken?" he asked, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were large, iridescent, shifting subtly between hues like the inside of a pearl. "No. But you might not want to." Martin sat anyway, dropping his duffel to the floor. "I'm Martin. Headed to Dryan." She hesitated, hands fidgeting with the hem of her beige top. "Lyra," she replied quietly, her voice melodic but tinged with resignation. "I should probably apologize for my scent. It's why they won't sit near me." Now that she mentioned it, he caught it, oceanic and briny, like salt air and seaweed. Instead of disgust, something else stirred in him. "You smell like the Maine coast," he said softly, eyes distant. "My family fished off the Atlantic. Grew up inhaling that scent. Makes me feel like I'm home." Her posture softened. "Really? You're not just being polite." "I'm a lot of things," Martin said with a crooked grin. "But polite ain't usually one of them." A small, grateful smile flickered across her lips. "I'm Aquarian. My species evolved in the deep oceans of Nisha. Our skin produces oils as a defense, something to deter predators. Most species can't stand it. Seems like a bad evolutionary hand to be dealt in a galaxy full of social creatures." She chuckled, the sound like wind chimes. "Tell me about it." The train accelerated smoothly. Twin suns painted the desert in gold as they glided over endless dunes. Martin glanced out the window, then back at Lyra. "What's an Aquarian doing on a dry planet like this?" "I'm a hydrologist. The Development Council hired me to map underground aquifers for future settlements. My people can sense water through solid rock. It's kind of our thing." "Damn useful," Martin said, genuinely impressed. "Beat smelling like fish bait." That made her laugh harder, drawing a few side eyes from nearby passengers. A stern, snout-faced Draconian let out a dismissive snort. "Don't mind him," Martin said. "Some people can't stand seeing others enjoy themselves." Lyra's freckles shimmered. A blush, he realized. "I'm not used to having company on the train," she admitted. "Especially not pleasant company." A soft chime interrupted them. Approaching Crimson Canyon Station. "Prepare for brief stop." "That's my transfer point," she said, gathering her things. "I need the Eastern Line to the research post." Martin's stomach dropped a little. Shame. The ride was just getting interesting. She paused, pulled a small hollow card from her satchel, and slipped it into his palm. "If you're ever back this way." Suddenly, the train shuddered violently. Passengers cried out. Lyra stumbled. Martin grabbed her instinctively, steadying her. "That," he muttered, "wasn't a scheduled stop." The lights blinked out. Emergency red lights buzzed to life. A low hum of panic began to ripple through the car. Martin stood, keeping one arm protectively around Lyra's waist. "Everyone stay calm." His voice cut through the confusion. Down and away from the windows. Years of Earth Defense Force training rushed back in. "This isn't a malfunction," he said to Lyra, his tone grim. "It's a textbook sabotage sequence." "You've done this before," she observed, eyes wide but steady. "EDF. 7th Tactical. We've got company." A tremor vibrated through the train as Martin peered out the window. Sleek hoverbikes zipped through the air, circling the stranded train like vultures. Masked figures in desert gear approached. "Sand raiders," hissed the Draconian. "They strip trains. Sometimes sell passengers to the mining corps," Martin said quietly. "Especially rare species." Lyra's skin paled. "Aquarians, we're valuable for water work." "I figured." A voice crackled over the intercom. "This is Captain Threll. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please remain seated."
Martin rolled his eyes. "Corporate speak for, you're on your own." He scanned the passengers. Mostly merchants and laborers, not much muscle. A grinding noise sounded above them. "They're cutting in." Martin turned to Lyra. "Time to move." A Draconian yanked on the emergency door, jammed. Martin knelt, pulling a tool from his boot. "Stand back." Lyra crouched beside him. "I can help. I have excellent night vision and sense air movement." He nodded. "Watch my back." She leaned in close. He could smell the ocean again, more intense now, sharp with adrenaline. It did something to him he wasn't prepared for. With a click, the lock released. "Let's move," he said, pushing the door open into the coupling space between cars. Quick and quiet. Passengers filed through. Lyra hesitated, then placed a cool hand on his arm. "Thank you. Most humans wouldn't." "I'm not most humans." She smiled, freckles glowing bright. Then, with a crash, the raiders breached the roof. "Move!" Martin barked, shoving Lyra through the exit. He jammed his tool into the lock, stalling the intruders. They rushed into the next car. The train now sat in the middle of a vast, barren wasteland. No cover. Nowhere to run. "We can't outrun them," Lyra said, scanning the horizon. "We don't have to," Martin said. "We just need to outfight them." Together, they began organizing a defense. And as they worked side by side, a strange current flowed between them, equal parts danger, desire, and the first flicker of something neither of them expected to find on a desert train car in the middle of nowhere. The train car shook again as Martin slammed the door shut behind them. 3 raiders had dropped in with military precision, plasma rifles humming with lethal intent. Martin jammed his multi-tool into the coupling mechanism between the cars. The lock hissed and sealed. "Keep moving," he growled, ushering passengers forward. The next car was thankfully empty. Martin guided them through while keeping a constant eye on the rear. Lyra stayed at his side, alert and composed, her turquoise skin now glowing faintly under the emergency lighting. He could feel the intensity of her presence, her proximity was distracting, but her courage was anchoring. Outside, the twin suns were beginning to dip below the horizon, casting jagged shadows across the dunes. The train sat exposed on a stretch of barren red desert. The Sand Raiders knew the terrain better than anyone, and the train's vulnerable state was an open invitation. Martin surveyed the interior. The passengers were huddled in clumps, frightened, confused, unarmed. He spotted a burly Torian freight worker and a wiry Vexorian merchant, each one showing signs of grit. He turned to Lyra. "We're not getting out of this unless we make a stand. You willing?" "I didn't evolve for desert combat," she said dryly, "but I can sense movement. Track vibrations. I'll warn you before they breach." "That's more than most." Martin scrounged through the train's compartments. He pulled out a few metal seat struts, dislodged some emergency fire extinguishers, and tossed a coil of reinforced wiring to a pair of passengers. Improvised weapons were better than none. The tension between him and Lyra grew by the second, not from fear, but something else. A shared charge, a connection deeper than anything he'd felt since leaving Earth. He could see it in the way her eyes tracked him, in the way her freckles pulsed like a living signal. "You're remarkable," she said softly during a moment of calm. "In a crisis, most species fall apart. But humans, you get sharper." "Training," Martin muttered, embarrassed but flattered. "No," she said. "It's instinct. You're wired for survival. It's attractive." The last word lingered. Her glowing skin, the scent of ocean, the way she stood just inches from him, it all stirred something primal. Martin looked into her eyes and wanted to say something real, something human, but a loud crash shattered the silence. The raiders were back. The rear door exploded inward, and 3 more attackers spilled in, masked, armed, and confident. Martin didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, swinging the metal strut with all his strength. The weapon connected with the first raider's helmet with a metallic crack, sending the assailant sprawling. "Down," he yelled. Lyra dove behind a seat, her eyes glowing bright silver in the emergency lights. Another raider opened fire wildly. A bolt sizzled past Martin's head, searing the wall. The Torian worker charged from the side, tackling the shooter to the floor in a blur of muscle and rage. A third raider lunged at Lyra. The Vexorian merchant moved faster than anyone expected, intercepting the attacker with a wicked jab of a broken seat leg. Martin's breath heaved in his chest. They were holding, for now. Then the train lurched. The red lights flickered, replaced by pulsing blue. A computerized voice announced in a sterile tone, "Emergency override engaged. Returning to nearest station. Manual controls disabled." "Wait, what?" Martin shouted. Captain Threll's voice crackled through the intercom. "The system's responding to the attack. It's returning us to the closest station, but the tracks ahead are damaged." Martin's blood went cold. "How damaged?" "Ahead of Crimson Canyon," Threll said grimly. "There's a full break in the rails. We'll hit it in about 12 minutes. Emergency speed is 320 kilometers per hour." Martin exhaled sharply. "We'll fly straight off the edge." Worse, the Leviathan had returned. A thunderous impact struck the train from behind. The rear window cracked. A massive serpentine creature emerged from the sands, its coppery scales gleaming in the fading light. 6 clawed limbs tore through the dunes as it pursued the accelerating train. Passengers screamed. "San Leviathan," Lyra whispered, "frozen. It followed the vibrations, Captain Threll said. Woke it from hibernation. Martin's jaw tightened. That thing will tear this train apart if the canyon doesn't kill us first. Can you get to the controls? He asked Lyra. She nodded, eyes still wide. I studied planetary transit systems at the Academy. But I'll need access to the lead car. Then let's move. Martin and Lyra raced through the remaining cars, dodging terrified passengers and fallen debris. The Leviathan crashed behind them, snapping at the rear cars, its size and power beyond comprehension. Inside the control room, Lyra immediately began working the console. Her fingers danced across the glowing panel, tapping in sequences he couldn't follow. The overrides locked, she growled. They damaged the board. Martin pressed close behind her, trying to analyze the layout. Can you bypass it? Maybe. I need. A horrible roar interrupted her. Screams echoed from the rear. Martin looked out the window, and froze. The Leviathan was gaining again. Its massive jaws opened wide enough to swallow a shuttle. They were nearly at Crimson Canyon. We've got less than 10 minutes, Captain Threll warned. The system is locked in. We're not stopping. Martin made a choice. Captain, help her with the controls. I'm going to buy us time. Before either could argue, he grabbed his duffel and bolted back down the train. Lyra caught his wrist. What are you planning? She demanded. Something stupid, he said with a crooked grin. But it might work. Their eyes locked, suspended in the eye of a storm. Lyra leaned in and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that sent a jolt through his entire body, cool, electric, and undeniable. She pulled away. That's how we wish luck. Martin blinked, stunned. If that's for luck, I'm coming back in one piece to see what else you do. She smiled. Then you'd better hurry. He ran. At the rear, Martin opened his duffel and pulled out his ace, a military-grade pulse rifle, disguised until now. Technically illegal. Definitely necessary. He aimed out the rear window, lined up the Leviathan's gaping maw, and fired. The creature shrieked as energy blasts struck its sensitive inner mouth. It fell back, thrashing, buying them a few precious seconds. Then Lyra's voice came over the intercom. Martin, we've got partial manual control, but we still can't slow down. I've got an idea, he replied. Tell me I'm not going to hate it. I'm going to decouple the rear cars. If we're lucky, the Leviathan will stop to feed. That's insane. Not if I time it right. He reached the rear coupling and set the emergency timer, 60 seconds. I'll use the last car's emergency brake to launch forward and jump to the front cars. You'll die if you're even half a second off. Martin clenched his jaw. Then I guess I'll just have to be on time. But just as he turned to run, Lyra's voice stopped him. Wait, I can feel something. Martin, there's water beneath us. A deep aquifer. What? I can sense it through the rock. If we angle the fall right, we might survive hitting it. How deep? 40 meters, give or take. Martin's brain raced. Then we use both plans. I'll trigger the decoupling. You steer us into that aquifer. He sprinted forward. The canyon edge loomed. As he passed through the swaying cars, passengers stared at him like a man walking into fire. He didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. He just ran. Because on the other side of this fall, if they survived, was something more than survival. Something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Martin burst into the lead car just as Lyra knelt at the front console, palms pressed flat to the floor, her silver freckles pulsing in rapid succession. She looked like she was glowing from the inside out. He skidded to a stop beside her, breath ragged. The aquifer, she whispered without opening her eyes. It runs directly under the canyon. There's a natural shaft, an erosion point. If we can steer toward it exactly. Can you find the precise spot? She opened her eyes, locking them with his. I can guide us to it. But someone still needs to trigger the decoupling at the right time. Martin nodded. Then I'll take care of that. Captain Threll interrupted from the console. Even if we drop some weight, we're still flying into that canyon at hundreds of kilometers an hour. We'll derail on impact. Not if we decelerate, Martin countered. I'll trigger the brake just before the break in the track. With Lyra guiding us into the water shaft, we might actually survive this. Lyra stood. The desert light from the front windows bathed her in a surreal orange-pink glow. She looked like a myth, part goddess, part marine creature, all alien beauty. Her expression turned serious. The odds aren't in our favor, Martin. I've beaten worse odds. She stepped close enough that her scent surrounded him again, salt and memory and adrenaline. In Aquarian culture, she said softly, before facing death, we share energy. It strengthens the bond. He didn't have to ask what she meant. Her tendrils moved with slow purpose, wrapping around his neck, drawing him in. Her lips met his again, but this time it was deeper, more primal. The kiss sent pulses of electric heat down his spine. Where their skin met, it tingled, almost vibrated. Light flared from her freckles. When they parted, she pressed her forehead against his. That's how we pass strength between kindred. I've never felt anything like that, Martin said, voice husky. We're not just compatible, she whispered. We're synchronizing. Another tremor shook the train. Go, she urged. Trigger the release. I'll find the shaft. Martin raced back through the swaying cars. The Leviathan was visible again, enormous and monstrous, surging across the sand. Its jaws opened, shrieking. He could feel the vibration of its pursuit in the metal floor beneath his feet. He reached the coupling between the third and fourth cars, the division between passengers and the sacrificial tail section. 60 seconds. That's what he gave himself. He flipped open the emergency release panel. The screen flashed red, asking for confirmation. He gave it. Then he ran. 30 meters back to the front car. Passengers were crying, bracing, praying in a dozen alien tongues. Martin didn't stop. Just before he reached the control cabin, he looked out the side window and saw it, the canyon, a vast chasm ripping across the desert, 200 meters wide and God knew how deep. 30 seconds to decoupling, he shouted. Lyra was already at the front window, arms extended, eyes closed, like she was communing with the planet itself. The entire front of the train was lit by her now, freckles pulsing like constellations, tendrils lifting slightly in a phantom current. I've found the shaft, she said without opening her eyes. A natural funnel in the rock. If we hit it exactly, the water will break our fall. The train lurched again. Clunk. The rear cars detached. Through the rear window, Martin watched as the Leviathan slammed into the now slowing back section. It tore into the metal like foil, jaws crushing glass and steel with terrifying ease. It worked, he shouted. It's feeding. But the moment of relief vanished. The front section was still flying toward the canyon at breakneck speed. Lyra turned. We're not going to make it unless we steer, Martin finished, lunging for the manual override. Guide me. Her hands went over his. Her skin was cooler than his, smooth and oddly comforting. Her freckles blazed, illuminating the console like starlight. Left 10 degrees, she said. The train hit the broken track. Screeching metal tore through the air as the train tilted. For one horrifying second, they were airborne. Martin wrestled the controls. There. Lyra shouted, pointing through the shattered windshield. The darker rock, aim there. Martin yanked the controls. The train tipped forward. The canyon rushed up to meet them. Passengers screamed. Then water. Cold, silver blue, glowing faintly in the abyss. They plunged through the rock shaft like a missile, shattering more stone before slamming into the aquifer below. Impact. Darkness. Silence. Martin gasped, choking on water. His leg burned. Pain flared through his ribs. He was still alive. Strong arms hauled him upward. Breathe. Lyra's voice, distorted and echoing. He surfaced, hacking water from his lungs. They were inside the lead car, half-flooded, emergency lights flickering. Passengers were moaning, coughing, disoriented, but alive. "You saved us," he said, staring into her glowing eyes. "We saved us," she corrected, pressing her palm to his cheek. "Your piloting was perfect." A yell from the rear interrupted them. Captain Threll was shouting. "We've got flooding. Evacuation through the roof hatch, now." Martin tried to stand. His legs screamed in protest. He stumbled, collapsing against the wall. Lyra was instantly at his side, fingers probing his thigh. Gash. Not broken, but deep. And bleeding too much. She tore a strip from her clothing and bound the wound. The glimpse of her bare skin beneath the fabric did things to Martin that the cold water failed to suppress. "Your species heals fast," she observed. "We're tough," he said through gritted teeth. "Stubborn, too." A low rumble echoed through the cavern. What the hell was that? Lyra froze. Leviathan. Martin paled. "No way. That thing's still alive." "They're burrowers," she said grimly. It must have followed the water trail. The passengers above fell silent. Another roar, closer. Martin forced himself upright. "We need to move. Everyone." Lyra closed her eyes. "There's a tunnel system nearby. I can sense it." They climbed onto the roof of the flooded train. Around them, a massive underground cavern glowed faintly with bioluminescence. The aquifer stretched out like an alien lake. "There." Lyra pointed to a ledge, 50 meters across the water. "We can reach the surface from there." "Move!" Martin shouted. As passengers dove into the water, Martin noticed movement below, slithering shadows. "Something's in the water," he muttered. They dove in. Lyra swam with incredible speed, her body built for it. She towed Martin, who kicked hard with his good leg. Then pain. Something brushed his wound. He looked down. Eel-like creatures, glowing, sharp-jawed, drawn to his blood. "Cave eels," Lyra warned. "Venomous. Don't let them bite." Martin kicked, but more closed in. Then Lyra did something unexpected. She pulled him close and released a cloud of iridescent particles from her pores. The eels fled instantly. "Defensive secretion," she explained as they swam. "The same thing that gives me my unfortunate scent." They reached the ledge. Martin climbed up with her help, wincing. Passengers scrambled behind them. Then a roar from the water. The Leviathan breached. Martin fired his rifle. It was nearly drained, but the last burst caught the beast in the eye. It thrashed, enraged but blinded for the moment. They fled into the tunnel. The danger hadn't passed. But Martin reached for Lyra's hand, her skin slick and cool in his grasp. "I told you I'd come back in one piece," he said, voice hoarse. Her freckles shimmered. "And I told you, when we survive, I'll show you how Aquarians celebrate life." He laughed, tired, aching, but alive. "Can't wait." The tunnel was narrow and steep, the stone slick with moisture. Bioluminescent moss clung to the walls, casting a soft blue-green glow as Martin limped alongside Lyra. Every step sent a jolt of pain up his thigh, but he clenched his jaw and kept moving. The others were somewhere ahead, led by Captain Threll and the few able-bodied passengers. But Martin didn't trust Threll. Not anymore. The path widened into a small alcove. Lyra guided him toward the stone wall and gently lowered him to the ground. Her tendrils unfurled slightly, brushing against his cheek in a gesture that felt intimate and instinctive. "You need to rest," she said softly. Martin was about to protest, but when she unwrapped the blood-soaked bandage, even he couldn't ignore the deep gash running from mid-thigh to just above the knee. It was discolored now, blue-black around the edges. Lyra's expression tightened. "Cave eel venom," she muttered. "Not lethal, but it'll keep the wound from clotting. And it'll keep hurting like hell." "Feels like fire laced with glass," Martin grunted. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she pressed her palms to his skin, just above and below the injury. A coolness spread through him, calming the fire. "My people produce a secretion that accelerates healing," she explained. "It might help." Before he could answer, she exhaled slowly. A thin, iridescent fluid began to emerge from her skin, covering the wound like liquid silk. It shimmered faintly, shifting between silver and blue. At first, Martin just felt relief. Then a rush, like energy flooding into his veins. Every nerve ending flared awake. The pain vanished, replaced by something strange and overwhelming. Not just sensation, sensation multiplied. Amplified. Almost erotic. What is that?" he gasped. Lyra's eyes widened. "That's not how it's supposed to feel." Martin could barely form words. "It feels like, everything at once." She leaned in, her fingers still resting on his thigh. "Our secretions aren't supposed to do that." "But maybe," she trailed off, watching the silver line of healing skin spread rapidly beneath her touch. "Maybe our biochemistry is unusually compatible." Understatement of the year. He felt his entire body react to her touch. Every place their skin met was alive, tingling, pulsing. And she noticed it too. Her freckles pulsed in rapid, shimmering waves. Her cheeks deepened in color, her tendrils curling and twitching. "Well," she said breathlessly, "this is unexpected." Martin chuckled, though his voice was ragged. "I've had physical therapy before. Never like this." She laughed, really laughed, and leaned forward, her lips inches from his. "You're healing fast. But that might just be adrenaline." "No," he murmured, "it's something else. It's you." Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she kissed him, slowly, deeply, her tendrils wrapping around his neck again. Where their bodies met, heat surged. The kiss wasn't hurried or desperate, just real. A confirmation of everything they'd been through, everything they'd felt building from the moment he sat beside her on the train. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "There's a legend among Aquarians," she whispered. "Of certain species, very rare, whose chemistry matches ours so perfectly that it triggers something deeper than attraction. A resonance. And that's what we're feeling." "I don't know," she admitted. "But I want to find out." He nodded, still lightheaded. "Then we find a way out of here. Together." They continued upward, through winding passages and bioluminescent corridors that seemed untouched by time. Lyra led the way, her glow lighting their path. Eventually, the tunnel widened again, and opened into a massive subterranean chamber. They froze. The space before them was like something from a dream. Carved directly into the rock were elegant, sweeping structures, half temple, half coral reef. Bioluminescent blue water flowed in channels etched into the stone, feeding a central pool that glowed with soft radiance. Suspended walkways connected stone towers, and the ceiling rose so high it disappeared into darkness. Lyra stepped forward in awe. "This can't be real." Martin followed, limping slightly. "What is it?" "A lost Aquarian city," she whispered. It must have been built thousands of years ago, back when this planet still had oceans. She moved toward the glowing pool, running her fingers along the stone. Etchings, symbols that mirrored the patterns of her freckles, glimmered in response. The water, she said, kneeling. It's infused with the same compounds our skin secretes. This place was built by my ancestors. Martin knelt beside her. What's it doing here? Why underground? My people believed in hiding sacred sites. This must have been the central hub of the ancient aquifer system. If it still works. A distant sound interrupted her, clinking metal, voices, footsteps. Martin's face hardened. We've got company. Figures began lowering on ropes from the cavern ceiling, dark silhouettes with rifles, climbing gear, and flashlights. Raiders? Martin asked, already reaching for his pulse rifle. No, Lyra said bitterly. Worse. Look who's leading them. Captain Threll touched down first, barking orders. Secure the site. Find the waterfinder and the human. He's working with them, Lyra hissed. He must have been all along. Martin counted at least 8 raiders behind Threll, each armed and armored. And judging by their postures, they weren't here to negotiate. We're outnumbered and low on firepower, Martin muttered. But we've got this place. Lyra turned to the central control pedestal, another structure covered in etched symbols. Her freckles began pulsing in response the moment she neared it. I think I can activate it, she whispered. If it still recognizes Aquarian biochemistry. Martin nodded. Then let's give them a surprise. They slipped through the shadows, using the stone structures as cover. The raiders fanned out, scanning every alcove with searchlights. But the chamber was massive, and the glowing waterways created endless reflections to confuse them. Lyra reached the pedestal and placed her hands on it. Instantly, blue light surged from the stone. Symbols lit up in concentric rings around her. It's working, she breathed. It knows me. A holographic map rose into the air, displaying the aquifer network beneath Nebulon 5. Thousands of branching tunnels and nodes connected in a living web. This system spans the entire planet, Lyra whispered in awe. There's enough water here to bring life back to every settlement. That's when Threll found them. Hands up, he barked, blaster leveled. 3 raiders flanked him, weapons trained on Martin and Lyra. Martin stepped between them. You've lost, Threll. This place doesn't belong to you. It does now, Threll snarled. You have no idea what this is worth. With the Aquarian's abilities and this technology, we'll control every drop of water on this rock. Martin kept his eyes on Lyra, subtly signaling with one hand behind his back. You're thinking too small, he said. Water's not just currency. It's survival. You want to play king of the sandpile? Go ahead. But this place won't let you. What are you talking about? Lyra smiled faintly. And pressed her palms deeper into the pedestal. The chamber exploded with light. Streams of living water surged from the channels in the stone, rising like liquid serpents. The glowing tendrils wrapped around the raiders mid-sentence, hardening into crystal-clear pillars. Every one of them, including Threll, was immobilized, suspended in place. Martin stared, stunned. You triggered a defense system. Lyra stepped back, her freckles glowing with triumph. The city defends itself. The water responds to threats. They're not dead. Just, contained. More mechanisms activated. High above, the cavern ceiling groaned, and then began to open. A hatch, hidden for millennia, rolled aside to reveal the stars of Nebulon 5's night sky. Lyra turned to Martin, eyes shimmering. And that's not all. The system's awakening. All of it. Across the entire planet. Martin wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close as the light bathed them both. You didn't just save us, he said softly. You just changed the future. We did, she corrected, curling a tendril around his wrist. Together. 3 months later, Nebulan 5 looked like a different planet. From the high balcony of the Dryan research outpost, Martin stood barefoot, arms resting on the warm stone railing. Below, a wide canal shimmered with faintly glowing blue water, winding through the once barren desert. Green shoots dotted the banks, early signs of reclaimed fertility. He took a deep breath. The air still carried dust, but now it also smelled faintly of life. Of rain. Behind him, the door slid open with a soft hiss. He didn't need to turn to know it was Lyra. Her scent reached him first, salt, ocean breeze, electricity. Then her voice, melodic and calm, with that familiar undertone of joy. The southern hemisphere is online, she said, stepping beside him. Water systems at 87% capacity. We'll have full planetary coverage within a year. Martin smiled, not taking his eyes off the horizon. We did it. She leaned against the railing beside him, her turquoise skin glowing softly in the evening light. You did it too. Without your reckless bravery, the Leviathan would have eaten the whole train. Reckless, he said, turning with a grin. You're the one who jumped into a subterranean lake full of venomous eels and activated an alien city's defense system while under fire. She laughed, freckles pulsing in gentle waves. For the record, I don't regret a second of it. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Her tendrils curled around his wrist instinctively. The connection between them was now something both mysterious and perfectly natural, like gravity, or the tide. The scientific community had gone into a frenzy after their return. The discovery of an intact Aquarian biosystem beneath the surface of Nebulan 5 was historic. But the real bombshell had been the biochemical compatibility between Martin and Lyra. They've officially published our case study, she said, amusement twinkling in her eyes. Top trending document in the Galactic Medical Archive. Martin smirked. So we're famous. They called it unprecedented human Aquarian synaptic resonance under shared stress conditions. He chuckled. Fancy words for kissing in a cave while a giant monster tried to kill us. Her expression softened. It was more than that. It still is. He leaned down and kissed her, slowly, without fear, without adrenaline, just affection. Her bioluminescent freckles lit up like stars across her cheeks, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. When they pulled apart, she rested her head against his chest. We should celebrate tonight. He raised an eyebrow. Aquarian style. She grinned. Scientific exploration of biochemical phenomena. I like where your research is headed. They spent the evening together, tucked away in her quarters. Warm stone, soft light, the scent of water and earth blending into something new. Their connection deepened, unburdened by danger, grounded by mutual respect and raw curiosity. They talked, they laughed, they studied each other like living mysteries. Later, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms beneath the soft glow of Lyra's freckles, Martin stared at the ceiling, wide awake and content. This all started because I sat next to the one girl no one wanted to sit near, he murmured. Lyra's tendrils curled lazily against his chest. You didn't flinch when you smelled me. It reminded me of the Atlantic coast. Of home. She lifted her head, her gaze soft. In Aquarian culture, we have a saying, the tide brings what is meant to find you. Martin kissed her forehead. Then I'm glad I broke down on this dustball planet. Outside, rain began to fall, a soft, steady rhythm on the roof, almost musical. The first natural rain in centuries. Lyra turned toward the window, watching the droplets streak the glass. It's working, she whispered. The planet is coming back. Martin pulled her closer. So are we. They listened in silence, the kind only found in safe places after long battles. Neither spoke, because there was no need to. Their story wasn't over, not by a long shot. But whatever came next, they'd face it together. And that's the end of our wild ride through the sandstorms, sabotage, leviathans, and love at the edge of the galaxy. What started with a broken-down freighter on Nebulan 5 turned into a full-blown planetary transformation, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something even more important, a bond between two species that were never supposed to fit, but did anyway. Martin Keller, our gruff human with a pulse rifle and a heart of gold, found more than survival. He found purpose. He found connection. He found someone who didn't just understand him, but resonated with him on a literal, biological level. And Lyra, a brilliant Aquarian hydrologist exiled by her own scent, found someone who didn't recoil, who instead leaned closer. Someone who reminded her that sometimes, what repels others might attract the one who matters most. Together, they didn't just fight monsters. They didn't just activate ancient tech. They reshaped a world, uncovered a lost civilization, and maybe rewrote the future for generations to come. That's sci-fi at its best, where heart and high-stakes action collide. If you enjoyed this story, you know what to do. Like this video if Martin and Lyra's bond gave you chills. Subscribe if you want more galaxy-sized adventures with love, danger, and a touch of mystery. And share it with a fellow sci-fi fan who believes that even in the farthest reaches of space, connection still matters. Thanks for watching. Stay curious. Stay bold. And I'll see you in the next story, right here, where the stars are just the beginning.